Welcome into a Tuesday, November 4th edition of Daily Faceoff Live. Tyler Yaremchuk, Carter Hutton with you. We are, as always, streaming live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube, and we are, as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, a big what's up to everybody in the YouTube. Drop in your inbox questions. Leave us a like if you don't mind. A big what's up to you, Carter Hutton. How you doing on a Tuesday morning, afternoon, whatever?
I'm doing well. It was nice to go. I guess you don't get to go to bed early because you're working the late games. But with the baseball playoffs over, I feel like a stress is lifted off me, right? I still feel annoyed, but it's nice to just buy into hockey here. Not a lot of games on the table. Some big comebacks last night. A lot of good games on to break down here.
Yeah, some real big comebacks on last night's schedule in the NHL. The Toronto Maple Leafs storming back against the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was looking like that might be a pretty interesting result. There are some Leafs fans who are getting a little bit antsy with that team out in Toronto. That is a conversation for tomorrow. We're going to have Steve Peters on the show. He's going to give us a film breakdown. But let's dig into the other big comeback on the board, or I guess what was almost a big comeback, as the Predators fall to the Vancouver Canucks last night by a score of 5-4. The Preds bang home a couple in the third period, just 4 minutes apart. They score twice in the final 9 minutes of the game. They bring it to overtime, but Brock Besser ends it, and now the Predators, they've lost 4 of 5. You look at where they sit in the West, they only have 5 wins through 14 games, and it's pretty easy to sit there and look at a lack of offensive production as a reason why they're struggling. They only have one player who's hit the double-digit mark in points through 14 games, and it's Philip Forsberg. Huts, you can sit here and go through this lineup and see a whole bunch of guys who are struggling, but none are fighting it more than the guy who is on your screen now, and that is Steven Stamkos. 2 points through 14 games for Stamkos.
Yeah, it's been a rough go here, right? I think since him coming over to Nashville, the expectations and where his game was at, obviously his leadership and then the way that things went down in Tampa, right? They forecasted this. They thought that he was going to take a step back at his age and where he was at. And right now they look like they played their cards right in Tampa. So it's been a tricky transition for the Nashville Predators. And the guy, Stamkos is a guy that is loved. People want to see him succeed. So it's been a rough go. And I think early on we thought about, was there too many guys that were shooters in this lineup and no one to distribute the puck to him? And that being said, this Preds team had that miracle run after the U2 canceled concert that we heard so much about, but falling behind in the Central Division seems like a daunting task to even come close to getting back in this race, Ty.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up that kind of miracle run they had a couple of years ago, because that was Barry Trotz's first season at the helm in Nashville. He takes over from David Poile on July 1st, 2023. They go out that season, losing the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it was like, all right, they had a good season. They put together a crazy second half. We're one of the hottest teams in the league going into those 2024 playoffs. What does Barry Trotz do as GM? He commits north of $100 million to 3 free agents that offseason. He signs Shea to a long-term deal, he signs Marchessault to a long-term deal, and he signs Steven Stamkos to a deal with an $8 million AAV. They go back the next year and they miss the playoffs, and it wasn't even close. They win 30 of their 82 games. They finish close to the basement. They end up picking 4th or 5th overall, whatever it was. And going into this year, Barry Trotz dropped the line of, we're going to try prove the experts wrong for a 3rd year in a row. And it's a little tongue-in-cheek because everyone thought they'd be a cup contender last year and they were brutal. But now I think you kind of get to the point where, what if this goes bad this year? What do you do if you're Barry Trotz? And we talked about this with organizations like San Jose and the Islanders, where the new GM comes in to take on the rebuild, and he gets a grace period from the fan base where you're allowed for a couple of years to stink and kind of just throw up your hand and say, hey, we're retooling, we're rebuilding, but I'll get it back on track soon. Barry Trotz might have blown his chance to be that guy.
It is too. And again, sometimes for a legendary coach who is remembered for that, you try to transition into it. And again, hockey is all Barry knows, right? I had a chance to play for him my first year in Nashville. He's a great individual, a great person, and a guy that would go out of his way. But there is an art to being a general manager. It's a different task. There's a lot more that goes with it than just understanding the game and understanding players, right? There's a lot to manage in a whole business like the NHL. So for Barry Trotz, I think we looked at this team early. It always felt this way to me, Ty. Like, it was like playing fantasy hockey. And like, we were like, wow, they got a lot of good players. And I think predictions from that free agency show we had worked. We said the Nashville Predators were the winners, right? We were like, they won free agency. They've got so many good players, but it's getting guys to play together in the right sense, right? And I think it's something that just hasn't happened yet. And I think UC Saros was a big factor in that run when they did make the playoffs down the stretch. And then he has a setback last year. He hasn't been great this year. And all that being told, it's been a rough go. And I think things fall on Trotz. So it will be interesting to see how this gets handled in Nashville with gentle hands too, right? Because you're talking about Barry Trotz, a guy who is in Nashville through and through. He's been there for a long time. He obviously moved on, won his cup with the Washington Capitals. But this isn't like just an outside GM that was hired. This was a guy that was hired with a purpose, his legacy factor in Nashville, and that changes a lot of this.
Yeah, I like this comment from J-Rock. He says, the smartest thing Trotz could do is retain 50% and send Stamkos to wherever he wants to go. That will free up cap space for Trotz to, well, probably fumble. And I mean, if you're a Predators fan, I know J-Rock isn't, but if you're a Predators fan, it's hard to sit there and be like, all right, yeah, Barry Trotz needs to move out some contracts and get some cap space. And it's like, well, to do what? Like, I think, by spending the money they did, they've made it really hard to probably do what's necessary. And that would be have a couple of years where they're not very good and can pick near the top of the draft. But again, if things spiral this year, are they maybe here? I'll close on this hot. So they may be the first team, and we'll talk about this later on, maybe with Jeff Marek. But are they a team you're looking at as a potential coaching change spot?
I think so. I think they're the first one on the list, and especially with the way that things happen in the NHL, where if you're not winning, you're not there. I would put them and the Buffalo Sabres in that list, right? If Buffalo continues to dwindle again, I think you see a coaching change, a complete overhaul. Obviously, Kevin Adams is on the hot seat, but there are teams that have short leashes right now, and I think the Preds are right at the top of that list.
Let's talk a little bit about some trade rumors, and we're going to stick in the Western Conference. A few things kind of swirling around surrounding the Edmonton Oilers over the last couple of days. They're going to have a bit of a roster crunch at some point here in the next few weeks. Alec Regula could be back from the IR. Zach Hyman should be back any week now. I think we can say Matthias Janmark could return to the lineup. He hasn't played a game yet this year either, and that's led to some talk that they could be looking to move a defenseman. Troy Stetcher is a name that popped up over the weekend. I believe Elliot Friedman used the term. They're trying to find a soft landing spot for him. Ty Emberson's name has popped up as well. Here's where that would make me nervous. And this is a team in Edmonton that obviously has aspirations of going on another deep, long playoff run. And Huts, you need not 6 defensemen, not 7 defensemen. You need 8 defensemen, sometimes 9 defensemen to get you through a long playoff run. I worry that Edmonton may be moving on from a D-man instead of, trying to slide someone through waivers or trying to get creative. Losing a D-man and losing a layer of depth in November could come back to bite you in the behind in April.
Yeah, it could, because you know the grind, right? In Edmonton, this is a team that has a lot of miles on it over the last few seasons on these deep playoff runs. And how many of these players that we've seen throughout this run have been impact guys come playoff time, right? Even you look at the fact of like what Jake Wallman has done as this pickup at the deadline that has added so much depth, and there's going to be more injuries. There's going to be guys that miss. And the way things are, it's going to be a dogfight till the end, right? This is a division that is loaded with teams and teams that are finding ways to win hockey games. I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think strategically, if you're the Edmonton Oilers, your worry isn't right now. Your worry is setting up for success when it matters most because of that due diligence of doing it now, knowing where you're at. So I do worry. I'm with you there, Ty. I think if you start to lose too many guys, you can't get them back, right? Like once they're gone, they're gone. I think importantly being said, what do they have in the system? What is in the American League? What guys can come up and play a few minutes? What guys can be in a 5-6 role or play a little? It's tricky, I think, as you look at the depth of this team. But for them, I think they're trying to condition themselves to be good in the playoffs, because we saw that with the Florida Panthers last year. I think they slowly kind of walked into the playoffs, but they were setting themselves up knowing what physically demands ahead of the playoffs here for them.
I want to pick your brain about the goaltending as well. Some talk that, hey, with the Oilers, if the goaltending doesn't get fixed, is Stuart Skinner a cap casualty as they could look to upgrade the position? $2.6 million. I don't think that makes sense, because the names that could be realistically out there, how much of an upgrade are they? Are you just moving on from Skinner for the sake of doing it? And listen, some Oilers fans, and I obviously talk to them every day on Oilers Nation, but it's like, oh, but if you could get Saros, but if you could get Sorokin, and it's like, okay, are you getting Saros or Sorokin? No, the realistic names are Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen or guys like that, or maybe a guy in Detroit like Cam Talbot if he shakes loose, although he's probably the starter right now, so that's a non-starter. But what do you make of the idea of moving on from Skinner if it were for we'll call it mild upgrade, like a Merzlikins or a UPL? Like giving up on a 26-year-old goalie for me in a move like that in a year where you're trying to win the cup. Just like, I can't get it to compute.
No, I think that's a tough call, and I agree with you. I know Skinner takes a lot of heat, and rightfully so at times. The Jekyll and Hyde in his game, and he can be bad. But again, I just don't know where in the market somebody gives you something that is an affordable price to move on from him. And the fact is, if you go looking to trade Stuart Skinner, I feel like it immediately shows your weakness in the trade market, right? Where teams are going to take advantage of you because you are the team in need of the goalie. So anyone who has a goalie that you need, they know they can hold you to the flame. So I feel like that hurts the Oilers to begin with. And the fact is he's 26 years old and he's been to back-to-back Stanley Cups. Yes, there's been blemishes. I'd be more worried about finding someone that is capable of being a big-time difference maker. And what I mean by that is Calvin Pickard has been great, right? Very serviceable, and I'll be the first guy to back Calvin Pickard. But is he the guy that's going to win you those games to get to a Stanley Cup? And I don't truly believe that is a factor, right? I've talked about this a lot. I saw your tweet last night. He just doesn't pass the eye test in the sense of his game is clunky. He's a puck stopper. He gets the job done, but he is not an elite guy, where I would be more worried about getting a guy that is serviceable when Stuart does have a little bit of a bad run, a bad month, a bad week, that can be a difference maker come playoff time. And I just don't think moving on from Skinner really is reasonable at this point.
No, again, if there is a miracle and some team wants to do something stupid and trade you a Sorokin, whoever that name is, then yeah, you consider it. But I don't think you just move on from Skinner to have a goalie like UPL playing with Calvin Pickard as a duo. I think if you're going to do anything realistically this season, it's upgrading the 1B spot, getting someone who can work in tandem. Maybe that's Connor Ingram, who's sitting in the minors, but his numbers have been atrocious so far in the American League. He's allowed 5 goals in 4 straight games for Bakersfield. So, yeah, I don't know. I see we put up a poll in here. Will Stuart Skinner be traded by the deadline? 75% of you saying no, and I think I would probably agree with the majority there. Quickly, Huts, before we get to our guest for the day and Jeff Marek from The Sheet, an announcement yesterday at Cowboy Stadium. The NHL is heading to Jerry World. The Dallas Stars are set to play an outdoor game at Cowboy Stadium in 2027, so a little bit down the line, but I was looking it up. 80,000 person capacity. So if they can sell out this game in 2027, it will be the 5th most attended hockey game of all time, the 4th most attended NHL game of all time. We have up on the board here the 2 games that obviously went down at Michigan Stadium in Ann Arbor were crazy. One of them was an NCAA game. One of them was Leafs Red Wings. But one, pretty cool to play in a stadium, and it's something you had a chance to do in your career, Huts.
I did. I have the memorabilia behind me, the wine bottle, when I played at Busch Stadium with St. Louis Blues against the Chicago Blackhawks. So honestly, it's a great experience. You know what I really remember about the experience was friends and family and everyone that gets to be involved in it, like the party after the game and the whole experience. And I think back to when we played there, I remember we stayed downtown in St. Louis. So they put us in a hotel because it was such a big draw. And I remember being on the bus driving to the stadium, and the streets were just littered with jerseys of people coming to Busch Stadium to watch it. And we had St. Louis fans flipping us off because we were the bus going into the stadium. I guess they just assumed it was the Chicago Blackhawks. So everybody was passionate about it. I think it's a great way for the game. And down in Texas, they like to do it big. So I think it's going to be quite the, just an unbelievable event. And I think for the Cowboys in general to be involved with the Stars is huge for hockey in Texas.
Have you ever been to that stadium in Dallas? Have you ever been to Jerry World?
I've never been, though, but my dad actually got to go. When we did the father's trip down in Dallas, they took all the dads during a game day and they got to go visit the locker room and do it all. My old man still talks about it. The Never Hungry League. That's 2 things he talks about. Dallas Cowboys Stadium and how in the NHL, there's food everywhere I go, Carter. I can't believe it. There's food everywhere.
That game you played at Busch Stadium, by the way, the 37th highest attended hockey game of all time. So not quite 80,000, but you guys were right around that, I think 38, 39,000 mark, which is still crazy. I've never played in front of 38 people, never mind 38,000. So, and some outdoor game news from the NHLs. They'll head to Cowboy Stadium in 2027. No opponent announced. I see someone asked about that. No opponent yet for the Dallas Stars. But again, that game's like a year and a half away, but a good announcement from the league yesterday. On that note, let's switch gears and head to our big segment for the day. It is Jeff Marek from The Sheet, and he's brought to you by Uber Eats. Uber Eats is enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. From game day eats to paper plates if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your favorite game day dip. Before, during, or after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Always a pleasure to be joined by Jeff Marek from The Sheet. Jeff, we started off the show talking a little bit about the Nashville Predators and Barry Trotz. And, you know, we're in November now, which is, I guess, kind of when some seats around the league could start to get warm. And the one thing we always say about GMs is like, hey, you always get to make the one coaching change, right? That's one bullet that a GM can fire to relieve some pressure. Do you think that's a bullet Barry Trotz wants to shoot?
Listen, as a general manager, you have two bullets, right? You have make a big trade or you have fire the coach. You know, once upon a time, pre-salary cap, the feeling was, and you could do this before everything was capped and trades were difficult to pull off at times. You would often hear managers say, you know what, I owe our coach a trade. Before we make up our mind on the coach, I owe him a trade to try to shake up the locker room a little bit and see if things change. Now, the salary cap sort of prevents GMs from having that luxury sometimes, and we all know how Barry Trotz has been quite aggressive, certainly 2 summers ago in bringing a lot of high-priced help into Nashville, which hasn't worked out. But I agree with Hutz from earlier. I mean, the seat under Bruno, under Andrew Burnett right now is probably as hot as it's ever been. Came close, but no cigar last night. They did pick up a point against the Vancouver Canucks, but things are spiraling in Nashville. It's a relatively new owner for this team in Bill Haslam. There's a $700 million renovation to the rink, which is certainly predicated on people going to the rink to see a competitive Nashville Predators team, and they're not getting that right now. I think the first thing, if you're Barry Trotz, one, you try to see if you can shake up the room. Trades are difficult right now. Right now, no one's going to help out the Nashville Predators. Teams will come trying to steal players. Oh, you're in distress. Let me try to help you here. That happens on a consistent basis around the NHL. But I do think it does get to a point where you have to make that decision. Now, I've wondered about Trotz going behind the bench himself. I don't think Trotz wants to do that. I do believe that, in Barry Trotz's mind, in the Preds organization's mind, the next man up behind the bench is Carl Taylor, who's done great work with the Milwaukee Admirals for a number of years. He's interviewed in a couple of different places around the NHL, most notably, I think, as an assistant in Toronto when Sheldon Keefe was there. But he's well thought of in the organization, outside of the Nashville Predators organization as well. But make no mistake about it. Right now, if you're Andrew Burnett, you're probably not feeling good about your position as head coach of this team. And my only question too is, you've got the best, and Hutz can talk about this. He had him. You've got the best coach the organization has ever seen already in the organization. I know his role now is general manager, but Hutz, you can talk with authority more than me and Tyler. What's he like as a head coach, not just to goaltenders, but let's not forget here too, this is a Nashville Predators team, and you guys talked about Stamkos. This is a veteran Nashville Predators team. This is not like he's shepherding in a bunch of kids. This is an older Pred squad here. You have a thought on what it was like as a goaltender to play for Barry Trotz? Because I keep coming back to it, rightly or wrongly. Keep coming back to the idea of Barry Trotz going behind the bench again.
Yeah, and I think that is probably the biggest point right now in Nashville is like, well, Barry, you built this team, you coach this team, right? And I think Bruno wears it on his sleeve. I had a chance to be down there. We went on the Leafs Nation vacation down there last year, and I went to a game, and I went in the room, and Bruno was actually pretty transparent with me just about how, I had a chance to play with Bruno when I was in Chicago, and again, just talking about how his struggles have been and how hard it's been with this squad and not getting the results. And I think for Barry Trotz, I just don't know if there's longevity to him being behind the bench where he's at. I think he was trying to take a step back because of his age, because of where he's at. And it becomes, because it is a young man's game coaching as well, right? There's a lot more demands on a coach at times being engaged in the bench, but Barry Trotz is a very understanding coach. He's demanding, but he is a guy that will have a man-to-man conversation with you. I think really helped me in my younger career. So I guess it's tricky, right? Because you want these stars to do well, but at what point do you start to move guys out, or who becomes accountable right now when it seems like no one's really taking the blame? And as I look across the NHL, Jeff, what other coaches do you think outside of Andrew Burnett are on the hot seat? You got to think about Hines in Minnesota, maybe in Buffalo, Lindy Ruff. What's your take on who else could be another coach maybe on the move here?
I could see both of those. I mean, any team that's sort of fallen out of it early here. It's funny too. There were some people that I talked to that are actually wondering, which may sound weird, and now they've circled back out of this swerve. But there were conversations that I had with people that were wondering, like, is this the year that it's finally over for John Cooper in Tampa? When they had their early struggles. I mean, he's been a head coach longer than anybody else in the league. Coaches have shelf lives, but right now in the Eastern Conference, everybody is essentially the same team right now. So it's difficult to try to figure out who's actually good and who's actually bad. I think that, Buffalo is always in a state of questioning. And listen, even today, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen coming off a great performance on Saturday. Buffalo's going back to Alex Lyon again today. So is that a message being sent? It looks like it, but I don't know. To your point about Lindy Ruff, I mean, he's on the expiring contract. You do wonder about him there. But listen, target number one, if we're going to put targets on people, has got to be Nashville. I mean, that's the one team that now for, a second go for it year in a row is really, really underperforming. And then maybe, Hudson Tyler, maybe to that conversation is the first thing you have to figure out in Nashville is what are they and where are they going? Right? Because if you make the decision that it's go for it, even in the short term, maybe Barry Trotz fits. But if you're going to go the route of a rebuild, then you need to start making calls and figure out what the marketplace is on a lot of your players. And that includes just about everybody on that roster. And I would imagine that would include UC Saros as well.
So and that's kind of where I wanted to go next was like, what kind of decisions do they have there? Because, Philip Forsberg, full no movement clause. That's the guy who, Saros, Yossi, Forsberg, that's the core of that team. But those are kind of the only three guys who I think would get you like a true haul, right, Jeff? Like Steven Stamkos.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to keep money. And can a GM go to a new owner and be like, hey, that guy we just spent a bunch of money on? Can we have that so I can trade him for a pick?
And well, you know what? That goes to my other point about, and I know why are you bringing this always back to Barry Trotz? You're going back to your owner and essentially saying, if you want to fire the coach and bring someone else in, it's like, well, hold on a second here. I'm not really in the business of paying someone not to work. You're the most successful coach in the history of this organization. You broke it, you buy it. It becomes yours. So here's what I think. If Nashville ultimately decides to go the rebuild route, and, we think about, Brady Martin and Tanner Mollendijk. I'm a big Teddy Stiga fan. I think he's going to be really good for this organization for a long time. But it's not as if they are flush with like a whole bunch of like A-listers that are going to walk in tomorrow. Okay, this isn't the San Jose Sharks. This isn't the Chicago Blackhawks. The question becomes, if you're going to go rebuild, how quickly can you get there? And the one player that I perhaps wonder about here the most is, again, UC Saros. Now, I'm curious about Carter's thoughts on this as a player. I'm of the belief that you can ask a player to go through a rebuild once. I don't think it's fair to ask a player, given how short careers are, I don't think it's fair to ask a player to go through a rebuild twice. That's why I think you go to Philip Forsberg and you say, look, you've been through it before with us as we put all of this together, but we're going to tear it down. Given where you're at in your career right now, do you have the stomach for this? Because it is going to be, years of pain before we get back, and who knows where you're going to be at the end of all of it. I think that's the conversation you have with your veterans, the guys with the no move clauses. But I think the biggest haul you can get, even though, having said that, we always look at trades for goaltenders and say, well, that's all they got. I mean, this is UC Saros we're talking about here. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if they've had the conversation. I would suspect that they have. I would be wondering about the team that is in the city where you live, Tyler Yaremchuk. Let that one dangle.
They need a goalie?
Oh. Yeah. I think, I honestly think it's honest. I guess the UC Saros trade is the interesting one for me, because then you come out being like, now we don't have Saros. Now we don't have Askarov. Like, what the heck were we doing? Why didn't we keep the young guy and play those minutes? And we moved on from nothing, right? So I guess that's the only one where it's, you know, from a fan base and from a goalie perspective, you're sitting there with what after the fact, right? So I think that would be the concerning angle for that for me, Jeff.
If it doesn't work out,
the last one,
you look back and you say, like, flat out, we made a mistake. We thought we were something that we weren't. Right. And, you know, here's another one, Carter. A couple of conversations that I've had revolve around the nature of what those trades and signings were. And it's tough to get a coaching mentality out of someone when they've coached for so long. And I've had people tell me, like, specifically with, you know, prioritizing UC Saros over Askarov here, it seemed like it was very much a coaching move made by a general manager. General managers are worried about the next 5 years. Coaches are worried about the next game. Who's going to get me the next win? I can't think about 5 years from now. Like, that's what I always wonder about coaches that become general managers, and it happens so infrequently now, almost never. But can you really get that mentality out of your head, considering it's been so ingrained in you for so long? Don't tell me about 5 years. Tell me about the next 5 games, because that's how I've lived my entire life.
But then even that makes sense in the lens of those free agent contracts they handed out, right? Like, I know in the moment a bunch of us loved them, but it's like a coach sits there and goes, I would love that guy, and I would love that guy, and I would love that guy. And it's like, okay, you didn't think about the contracts or how they're going to age.
No. Yeah, and think that was the point. Those were general managers' decisions that seemed that they were fueled by someone who's been a coach for a decade and a very successful one, a Stanley Cup champion. I don't want to discredit Barry Trotz whatsoever, but they were made with more of a coach's mentality than a view to the future, which is traditionally, you know, the bailiwick of a general manager. Good point.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Jeff, for doing this. It's always a pleasure, and we'll chat with you again. Oh, what's coming up today on the sheet?
We got a couple things. So Greg Wyshynski stopping by. We are already handing out hardware on a month in. So it's the Coach of the Year, the Hart Trophy, all of it. Like, why not? 1 month in. I'll tell you what. You know who's been a real star that's not getting a lot of headlines, but you'd never see this team surrender odd man rushes, and they're on top of the Pacific Division right now? Lane Lambert and the Seattle Kraken. Well, I know it's not like a sexy team to watch. Watch the Kraken and count how many times they surrender odd man rushes. It doesn't happen. And they're not the most exciting team. They don't score a bunch of goals. Jared McCann is out. But this is an impressive defensive team. The goaltending's good. The blue line's there. And they don't surrender odd man rushes. All that excitement coming up here in 30 minutes, Tyler.
Love it. Thank you very much, Jeff. We'll chat next week.
Thanks, guys.
Get to our daily Faceoff inbox question, hashtag AskDFO. J-Rock threw one in that I kind of found interesting, and it ties in nicely to the Predators conversation, I think, because, listen, if you had to take over as GM of any team in the NHL, Nashville is very, 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 very far down that list. Like, it looks like a mess to try to get out of this. But if you had to take over as GM of any team, who would be number one on your list, Carter? I think it's an interesting question.
Oh, I think the way things are going, I might say San Jose. I just think it's like a young, exciting team with lots of good talent, a good young goalie. Like, things are looking up, and it feels like to me like they've got a little bit of like a pass right now, right? Like, I feel like things are trending in the right direction. I think that might be the team for me, Ty.
I think mine is Utah. They're kind of the sexy pick. Ton of cap space, ton of picks, a bunch of talent that's already kind of established and doing things at the NHL level. It's a bit more of a certain thing, if you want to call it that. And all those guys are locked up with term, as we spoke about last week when Cooley signed. So I think I might go with Utah. Let's get to our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Huts, you were the one winner yesterday.
Here it is, baby. Money line. I love it. Easy money. Let's keep rolling here.
Very good. I'll get to my pick for tonight. Yesterday, Pat didn't hit yesterday. No, he missed as well. So I'll get to my pick for tonight. What do we got? Another shot prop parlay coming up. I'm going Matt Schaefer and Brock Faber. The line is 2 for each of them. You play them together, it's plus 142. They have each hit and honestly kind of crushed this line in their last 5 games. So they're both on great runs of doing this. Both defensemen who fire pucks from the point, plus 142. I like my shot prop parlay today. Pat, what do you got?
Yeah, I didn't hit yesterday. I had Crosby and Matthews at 3 shots, and Crosby only had 2. I thought that was a good one, but unfortunately not. So I've decided to go away from the shot prop today, and I'm just going to go Oilers money line versus the Stars. They had a very disappointing loss yesterday to the Blues. Probably should have won. Didn't play overly great necessarily, but kind of gave it up last minute. So they're going to be fired up going into Dallas as well. Ottinger is not starting tonight. I believe it is DeSmith. So I like the Oilers at plus 105. Let's jump to Carter.
Yeah, I like that bet. Jake Ottinger actually had a baby, so he is out of the lineup. Casey DeSmith, a little fun fact for everybody. But I am going to go with Rangers Hurricanes over tonight. It's over 5.5. I like this game. But Chekhov is getting his first start of the year. I just think the Rangers are due to score some goals. The Hurricanes always like to generate some offense, so I'm going over 5.5.
I like that one as well. The Dallas Stars, to Pat's bet, is missing a ton of NHL players tonight. Basically, half of their top 6 is out of the lineup. No Rupe Hintz, no Matt Duchene, no Jamie Benn tonight for them. As on the Oilers, Edmonton is going with Skinner as well after playing Pickard last night. Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time Huts, and I like that you sent this along. Joey Decord looking to find the back of the net. Not once, as you can see here, and this was his best attempt. I mean, that looked like it was online, but Lev Shunov was able to track it down. But as people on YouTube get to see the clip here, he goes for it again, Huts. 2 attempts, 2 shot-on-goal attempts in like 30 seconds for a goalie.
I love it. I love it. Joey Decord is a very good puck handling goalie. So he's a guy that takes a chance. And you know, when you're up to, you know, you're feeling it, right? He's up to, he's got the vibe and he's going for it. So I love it. And I did enjoy his tweet after. He tweeted, shooters shoot. And that's a good point by Joey Decord. You got to love it.
Yeah, I love it. A little offense from the goalies. Did you ever get close to one?
So I never scored in a game. I remember I had one real good chance against Arizona, and OEL, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, knocked it down at the far blue line with a high stick. I did score in an exhibition game in Sabres in the COVID year. There's actually a clip of it. I should have sent it in from YouTube, but I sniped one. Marty Braun's on the call, and that's about it, though. Never in regulation, just in an exhibition game.
Pat, did we grab the picture of Huts at the Winter Classic? Do we have it? Do we have it? A little trip down memory lane?
I saw it somewhere on our preview page there. I'm decked out there. There it is.
Yellow pads. Oh.
Cocky, hey? Those are cocky pads. Shattenkirk's probably setting up for the party after. So we had a lot of fun the night after. We had a big win. Tarasenko put us on his shoulders there and won the game. The first shot of the game went in on Jake Allen. I was sitting on the bench and I was getting nervous because he had been struggling that year. But that started our team, and then we started to get rolling after that.
Yeah, that's good. You do have the free pass as a goalie to go like absolutely insane with the equipment for a Winter Classic.
You know what? You know what's funny is I actually had a different color scheme set up. And when CCM would send me the gear, the blue wasn't even close to matching the jersey. So then finally I gave up and I let the trainer take reign. Joel, he took over and we came out with the yellow. It was cool. We wore them a few times after at home. So it was a unique one, but I felt like I was moving a million miles an hour in it because I was so used to like white. With the flashy colors, I felt like I was moving all over.
That's good. All right, that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Big shout out to Jeff Marek for popping by. Tomorrow, Steve Peters is going to talk a little Toronto Maple Leafs with us, and we'll get into whatever else pops up tonight around the NHL. Have a good Tuesday. We'll see everybody back here tomorrow, noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Marek, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.